Your tomato plant finally has fruit on it, small green tomatoes hanging on the vine. And this is the moment most gardeners relax. They think the hard part is over. But after a tomato sets, the fruit can still fail quietly. One can split open after a night of rain. One can look full outside, then feel hollow when you cut it open. One can turn black at the bottom before it ever ripens. And the dangerous part is this. By the time you see the damage, the problem usually started earlier, before the rain, before the black spot, sometimes before the fruit even formed. You may have watered, fed, and followed the same routine that worked all spring. But after fruit sets, the plant is no longer asking for the same care. There are 3 things that protect tomatoes at this stage, and the first one is something many gardeners throw away every week without knowing it. When tomatoes set fruit, most gardeners feel the same thing: relief. The hard part is over. Now you water, wait, and harvest. They do not ignore the plant. They water. They feed. They follow the same schedule that worked all spring. And the fruit still fails. There are 3 ways a tomato can fail after it sets, and by the time most gardeners notice them from the outside, the damage has usually already started. You have probably walked out to a tomato that looked perfect the day before and found it split open down the side after a single night of rain. Or cut open a fruit that felt full in your hand, only to find nothing inside where the flesh should be. Or watch the bottom of a tomato go dark and soft quietly, with no insects, no visible disease, just collapsing from the inside out. Each of those happened after the plant already set fruit. After you thought the hard part was done. 3 different problems. But after fruit sets, they all get worse when the plant loses the stability it needs to protect what is already growing. There is something that helps protect that stability, and most gardeners are throwing it away every week without knowing it. After fruit sets, the plant moves into a different stage. The habits that brought it here may not be what it needs now. The first problem starts with rain, or rather, with what happened in the days before the rain arrived. The rain arrives. The next morning, you walk out and find a tomato split open down the side. You think, the rain did it. The rain is usually the trigger you can see. But the conditions that make cracking possible are often set up in the days before when nothing looks wrong from the outside. You watered on schedule. The plant never wilted completely, but the soil still moved through dry and wet cycles, and that movement is enough. When the soil swings from dry to wet too quickly, water moves into the fruit faster than the skin can stretch to hold it. The interior expands. The skin splits. University of Missouri Extension describes it this way. The problem is not the rain itself, it is the rapid change in soil moisture that the rain triggers. 2 different cracking patterns can appear: vertical splits down from the stem or circular cracks around the shoulder. Both are often linked to the same kind of soil moisture swing, made worse by heat and how mature the fruit already is. And once heat has reduced the skin's elasticity, a single heavy watering after a few dry days can be enough to split a ripening tomato overnight. Check the soil today. Push a finger 2 to 3 inches down. If it is dry, water slowly and deeply now. The goal is not to add more water. It is to keep the soil from swinging. But steady watering only protects part of the fruit. Calcium, which keeps the bottom of the fruit from breaking down, also moves only with water. And when that flow is interrupted, a different kind of damage begins. One that most gardeners are trying to fix in exactly the wrong place. The bottom of the tomato turns dark, then darker, then it sinks inward. You reach for eggshells, or Epsom salt, or a calcium spray for the leaves. The fruit keeps rotting. Not because calcium does not matter, but in many home gardens, the soil may already have enough of it. University of Wisconsin Extension notes that blossom end rot is often not a soil calcium problem. It is a delivery problem. For developing fruit, calcium mostly arrives with the water moving upward through the plant. When the plant wilts even briefly on one hot afternoon, that upward flow slows. When you water again, the leaves pull harder on that flow than the fruit does. Leaves release moisture into the air far more actively than fruit. The fruit gets what is left. University of Wisconsin Extension notes that even a short period of wilting can be enough to interrupt the calcium supply to developing fruit. Feeding high nitrogen fertilizer after fruit sets can make this worse. More nitrogen encourages more leaf growth, and more leaves make it harder for developing fruit to get its share of calcium from that upward flow. Avoid pushing high nitrogen fertilizer once fruit has set. If the plant needs feeding, move toward a lower nitrogen, higher potassium ratio. But there is a third problem. And it starts before the fruit ever forms, before you can see any sign of it at all. A hollow tomato is not a sick plant. It is a record of something that happened weeks before you picked it up. You pick a tomato that looks full, but when you lift it, it feels lighter than it should. You cut it open. Inside, empty spaces where the gel should be. Fewer seeds than normal. Less of everything the fruit was supposed to have. The plant does not look sick. The fruit did not look wrong from the outside. But something failed weeks before you picked it and left no sign on the surface. This is often called hollow fruit or puffiness. And it is not a sign the plant was missing nutrients. It is a record of what happened inside the flower before pollination could finish. Tomato pollen is sensitive to temperature. When daytime heat stays above 85 degrees for several days, pollen can become less viable. On warm nights, especially when temperatures stay above 75 degrees, pollen tube growth is often slowed or interrupted. When pollination is incomplete, seeds do not develop fully. Without seeds, the signal that fills the inside of the tomato with juice and flesh never arrives. The skin grows. The inside stays hollow. Extension guides commonly link puffy or hollow fruit to poor pollination, weak seed development, and temperature stress during flowering, not to disease, and not to a nutrient deficiency in the soil. And this is where many gardeners make the response worse. They see hollow fruit. They see rot at the bottom. They see fewer tomatoes setting. And they reach for fertilizer, assuming the plant needs more of something. High nitrogen fertilizer after fruit sets does not repair hollow fruit. It does not prevent blossom end rot. And as you heard in the last segment, it can make it harder for developing fruit to receive enough calcium. The instinct to feed more is understandable. But after fruit sets, more nitrogen often pushes the plant in the wrong direction. Two of these three problems, cracking and blossom end rot, share something in common. They both get worse when the soil loses stability. When moisture swings, when roots run hot, hollow fruit is different. It starts before the fruit forms, in the flower, during pollination. Nothing you do to the soil after fruit sets can reverse that. But for the two problems you can still protect against, there is something that helps. And it is not a fertilizer. It is not eggshells. It is not a product from any store. It is something in your house right now. Something most gardeners are throwing away every week without knowing it. Old newspaper, cardboard from a cereal box, a shoe box, an Amazon delivery. Most gardeners throw this away every week while their tomatoes crack and rot on the vine. What it does specifically is protect the root zone. The stability that cracking and blossom end rot both depend on. Wet it completely. Lay 3 to 4 layers around the base of the plant, out past the drip line. Keep it 2 to 3 inches from the stem. Wet paper and cardboard help reduce how sharply the soil swings between dry and wet. When that swing is smaller, the fruit is less likely to absorb a sudden surge of water. Steadier moisture means the upward flow carrying calcium is less likely to be interrupted. The root zone stays cooler and cooler roots keep working more consistently. Extension research on mulching consistently supports this. More stable soil moisture after fruit set is one of the more effective steps for reducing cracking and blossom end rot. It does not reverse every problem, but it protects the stability that keeps many fruit problems from getting worse. Wet any newspaper or cardboard you have. Lay it around the base. Add straw or dry leaves on top to hold it down. Reapply every 2 to 3 weeks as the layers break down. Once the soil is covered, there is one decision left, and most gardeners get it wrong every season without realizing it. It happens right when the fruit starts to change color. Most gardeners wait until the tomato is fully red before they pick it. That feels like patience, like getting the most out of the plant. Penn State Extension research points to something different. The moment a tomato shows the first blush of pink or orange at the bottom, everything it needs to finish ripening is already inside the fruit. The sugars are there. The acids are there. What the vine can still offer at that point is not nutrition. It is exposure to rain, to heat, to the pressure that splits the skin. This is called the breaker stage. Harvesting here is not giving up on the tomato. It is protecting everything the plant already put into it. Bring it inside. Leave it at room temperature, not the refrigerator, which stops the ripening process. Within 5 to 7 days, it will finish to full color. And sitting indoors, it will not be split open by the next rain. Go out today and check the bottom of each fruit. Any sign of pink or orange, pick it now. 3 things. Newspaper and cardboard around the base. No high nitrogen feeding after fruit sets. And harvest at the first sign of color. None of this requires buying anything. All of it can be done this week. The next time you walk out and see a cracked tomato, or a black patch at the bottom, or a fruit that feels hollow when you cut it, you will know what you are looking at. Not bad luck, not a mystery, a sign of something that started before you saw it. And one of the simplest ways to protect it is in your recycling bin. Most gardeners reaching for eggshells and Epsom salt are trying to solve a delivery problem with a supply solution. Now you know the difference. But there is a fourth reason tomato fruit fails after it sets. And it does not happen above the soil. You covered the soil with newspaper. You stopped pushing high nitrogen. You harvested at the right moment. And the fruit still comes out wrong. What is happening is underground in the root zone, where old nitrogen compounds remaining in the soil affect what the roots can take up. It does not show on the surface until the fruit has already paid for it. The next video covers exactly what that is, and why two gardeners can do everything the same above ground and still end up with completely different results by the end of the season. If that has happened to you, if you did everything right and the fruit still failed, leave it in the comments. I read every one. Because if you have laid the newspaper, stopped the nitrogen, and started harvesting at the breaker stage and the fruit is still failing, the answer is already happening. Underground. Right now.